What's up, everybody? Nate here from Out of the Basement, bringing you another Black Series catch-up video. Today, I'm going to be running through quite a few figures here, just kind of giving my brief thoughts on them since it has been absolutely raining Black Series figures recently. It's honestly been very hard to keep up review-wise. So yeah, that leads us to a catch-up video where I'm just going to go through and give my brief thoughts on these figures kind of one by one. So before I jump in, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe if you're new. We're always talking about Black Series here on the channel. And let's start with some Andor goodness. Alright, so we'll focus in on Krennic here, and this figure is the exact same figure we got released way back when Rogue One came out, now with a simple photoreal update. But even though it is an old dated figure, I think that likeness actually looks really nice. And even though it does have a little bit of a gloss to it, you can really see that some of those Black Series sculpts back then were actually pretty strong and just had weak paint applications. Just for a comparison, here you go, side by side between the two. The same exact figure, just one with the photoreal paint apps. So he looks great. One thing that I did think was pretty interesting is that there's some really cool smudges here on the cape, but his cape is actually a really soft plastic this time around. It's nice and malleable. This old one here is actually a lot harder, much more stiff, kind of, really hard to illustrate that. It's actually kind of nice because that probably allows a little bit more freedom in terms of actually being able to have him pointing his blaster, which thankfully they did include the brown paint. I know in the promo images, I believe there was not any paint on the blaster, but it is actually there, so that's good. I guess doing like the aiming pose here, you could kind of get it with both versions of the cape, but I don't know. I think, this one it actually looks pretty good. However, I will say that I think Director Krennic could have got a brand new figure. It is a little bit of a bummer, in my opinion, that they wasted the new tooling for a Krennic figure on that ceremony design simply because it's such a brief moment in the series, whereas obviously this is his look in later parts of the series and in Rogue One. So I feel like this could have easily warranted a brand new figure. And we do have new updated Imperial officer parts that they could have used too, so he wouldn't even have to actually be like a brand new figure. But still, this one is definitely one I think is a worthy pickup, simply because he was the last Rogue One figure we needed to get a photoreal update. So now that crew of figures is finally complete. I thought Season 2 of Andor was pretty damn awesome, so I am picking up most of the figures as they come out. There's going to be a couple that I'm going to wait for them to drop on clearance, but one I did not wait for was the Sinar test pilot. Even though this figure and this costume is so brief in the show, just a few episodes. And actually, I think he doesn't even have the armor piece on for the most part, so this is actually really just the very beginning, and we don't actually see him put the helmet on at all. I think we see him grab it, but I don't think we ever actually see Cassian put this helmet on. But yeah, the likeness, for whatever reason, I feel like is a kind of weak on this figure. Something about those eyes, it just looks a little off. So with this being a trooper, I'm just going to simply have the helmet on for the most part, and I'm actually just going to have him on the Imperial shelf with the other pilots. But this is actually a brand new figure, so it is really nicely detailed, great sculpt work. The only thing that's a little disappointing is there is no thigh swivel, and it's hard to get him into a natural looking shooting pose. Once again, it's just one of those things where you rotate the knee to compensate, and it just doesn't work out the way you want it to. So we really need that thigh swivel back, or just better range at the hips, because this is frankly not enough. He does have boot swivel, which I do think is cool. So we get boot swivel, but thigh swivel's where they draw the line these days. But yeah, this is a figure that I think is just a really cool design anyways. It's a striking newer Imperial design, so I think he's going to look great blended in on the Empire shelf. And I think the theme for a lot of these Andor Season 2 figures are literally just flash in the pan, blink and you'll miss it moments, such as this updated range trooper with the rocket launcher that you literally see right at the beginning of the very first episode of Andor. Just for a very brief moment, you see him fire his rocket and then never to be seen again. So you know that means Hasbro had to take that time and opportunity and get us another range trooper out, because they didn't get too much use out of this sculpt, you know. And we actually do have some new lower legs, so he doesn't have the gravity boots on anymore, so that is kind of interesting. But otherwise it is just the same exact figure that we've seen, and it's a little clunky because it's dated, but he can hold the rocket launcher at least, so that is pretty neat. And I do believe this rocket launcher is actually a new sculpt. It's different from the Clone Wars one that we've seen, and it does actually have some paint on it. Look at that. So yeah, there is the range trooper. This one is just kind of like I saw it on the shelf, so I grabbed it, and he'll probably be a pretty cool clearance pickup, so just keep your eyes peeled at your local Target. Let's move on to some Jedi Survivor figures here. This is the Amazon exclusive 2-pack with the BX Commando droid and Dagan Jarrah with the Force Ghost arm. This was the version that I was specifically waiting for. There is that single release of the figure that just has no arm. He only has the one. But I thought it was cool that they revealed they were actually going to do a representation of the Force arm with this clear blue plastic, which I think does its job well. You know, it serves its purpose, although they gave him a trigger finger, which is bizarre, but you know, whatever. The figure itself looks really nice, although I will say he's not really all that pleasant to mess around with, if you ask me. I do like the gold detailing on the costume. Everything looks really good. The figure itself looks awesome, but in my opinion, he's a little clunky, little, you know, stiff. The double-bladed lightsaber, too, just doesn't really help the posability at all. He's got this long hair, but it is restricted. The movement is a little difficult to get, you know, around this sculpted hood, so you definitely have to play around with it to kind of really get him to work for you. And then even then, I get why this is sculpted, and I do like that this is sculpted, but it does definitely restrict the posability simply because the hair and the hood are clashing. Still though, the details are just so nice on Dagan. He looks awesome. And the Commando droid too, I think, is really striking as well. The gold paint is pretty metallic for a Hasbro figure, and it's actually on a decent amount of the figure. You can see it switches to plastic for the lower legs and the feet and on the hands as well, but it honestly blends decently. Obviously you can tell the difference between where it's painted and where it is not painted, but look at that paint on the back of the figure. What? That is just crazy, and it's awesome to actually get a Commando droid that doesn't have any QC issues, so I could actually see that this figure is pretty sweet when there's no QC issues. This one is really posable. I'm really liking just how flexible the ab crunch actually is on the figure. I must have to do some hot water treatment on my original BX droid, because there's no way that original one is getting this kind of range out of it. So I've actually been having a lot of fun messing with this battle droid simply because it's seemingly free of QC issues. So yeah, this one's actually pretty damn awesome. And the last two figures are also a 2-pack. Finally, for the Black Series catch-up today, we're taking a look at the Shadows of the Empire Luke and Leia. This is a Hasbro Pulse exclusive set, one that I was initially on the fence about, but when Wilbon showed them off on Monday Night Figure Ball, and I just saw how upgraded Leia was and how cool this Luke is. I have all the other Shadows figures so far, so why not keep it going and add to that display. So I picked these up. A little bit of a hostage 2-pack if you ask me, simply because everyone really wanted this Luke, and we just bought this Leia. However, I will say the Leia is surprisingly updated, and in my opinion, if you're a hardcore Black Series collector like me, a worthy upgrade. So we get a brand new head sculpt here right off the bat. This is working off the archive updated version too, so she's got the shorter legs. The arms are definitely still an issue, but hey, you know, it's better. It's better. For the first time, the thermal detonator is actually painted silver, and this is removable, but obviously just be very careful. It's a very, very tiny accessory, so it can be lost easily. And just look at that head. That updated face looks so good. And since it is an updated head, we also have the helmet here, which again is also updated, brand new sculpt. I do have the archive version of Boushh Leia right here, so you can definitely see the difference between the two. Put the helmets on. The old one is a much larger helmet. I think this new one is much better in line with the newer proportions of the figure. Also, there's the unpainted, well, it has a little bit of silver on it, but the incorrectly painted thermal detonator. And night and day difference for the heads. This new Shadows of the Empire version looks much more like Leia than this old version, which is simply photoreal applied to that original head sculpt. It's not horrible, but yeah, I think there's really no comparison here. Although one could argue it's not really all that important, because who's really displaying Boushh Leia without the helmet on? And we do also get a better stitched cape. I don't think it's actually a new cape, but you can see they added stitching. So this is where the budget for the Emperor on the throne went here. We got an extra stitch on this Leia to hold the soft goods cape in a little bit better than on the archive release. So, wow. There we go. So now that mystery is solved. If we were all wondering where that budget went, and it turns out they added a stitch to this Leia. So, personally, while the new head is great, I do really like the new helmet as well, and I will, once again, probably be displaying her with the helmet on. And finally, Luke here is pretty cool. He also has a removable helmet. This is from when he is in a Royal Guard disguise. It kind of would have been nice to get this as a 2-pack and also include Lando, because that's who is with Luke during those scenes, also wearing the same exact outfit. So it actually would have been even easier reuse potentially versus all the upgrading they did for Boushh Leia. Anyways, this head sculpt is all right. I think it's fine. Serves its purpose. It's not bad. It's not great. It's just somewhere in the middle. Pretty average Hasbro, Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker head. The figure itself does actually reuse quite a bit of clone trooper parts, like Commander Cody. This is definitely Commander Cody's chest piece here with, you know, this cape piece kind of sculpted and glued on top. I do believe the legs are new though, because they are lacking thigh swivel once again. Luke is also kind of a chinner, which is a little unfortunate with this design, but it is pretty easy to hide. So you just kind of get him to look down a little bit, and it's fine. It's not too bad, but, you know, I do have to point out that he is a chinner, because now if I don't, people are going to be like, why didn't you point out he's a chinner? Well, he is a chinner, but for this particular figure, it doesn't bug me. So, pretty dynamic stuff, pretty cool, striking design. I'm going to put him with the other Royal Guards. I wish we could have just got 2, because I'm definitely not going to buy a second 2-pack and get stuck with another Boushh Leia, but yeah, this is a pretty awesome figure. Looks good. Pretty good representation of that Royal Guard trooper design, at least as far as, you know, like illustrations go of what it's supposed to look like. I think this gets it pretty close. So yeah, I like what they did here. With the Shadows figures though, they still missed a huge opportunity to give us anniversary card back packaging for the figures. I think that would have went so hard, and that way we could have got 2 of this figure, because it would have been a solo release, and I probably would have ended up buying 2 of the Leia, since she's a pretty decent upgrade and I love those card backs, so I would have kept one on card. But for whatever reason, they're making the Shadows figures mainline. It's a little disappointing, but yeah, Luke is a fun figure. And I think if you're collecting the other Shadows figures, you might as well just bite the bullet to pick this one up. So there you have it. There was my Black Series catch-up. I hope you enjoyed my quick thoughts on all of these figures. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like. Subscribe if you are new. We're always talking about Star Wars The Black Series here on the channel. I'm Nate from Out of the Basement. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.